Welcome back to the Top 10 Movie Podcast with Mike and Mully. This is Mully, that's Mike. And today's Top 10 list, Mike, is one that you came up with. Top 10 movies that make me miss my childhood. What was your impetus to actually create this list?
First, I want to say I'm on a roll. I think I've come with the last three lists. So, again, I'm pulling my own weight still, being consistent. For this list, I was just thinking, I like to keep our lists fresh and dynamic and interesting for us. Because obviously, if we're not interested, then whatever listeners we do have are going to fall off too. So I try to come up with a list that I think is interesting enough to hold our attention span and then also anyone listening. And I kind of had to really think about this. Like, what is a list that we haven't done that kind of stands out? So I'm going through like a Rolodex of ideas, and I'm tossing this idea to the right, tossing this idea to the left, and this one pops in. Like, because of our age, it really helps out. Like, we're in our 40s, so we've seen a bunch of movies from our childhood that we probably hold as iconic and nostalgia's sake that we can still go back to, and it just makes me think, man, I remember when I was this age and seeing that, or I kind of wish I was still that age because of, where we were in life and how things were just not as stressful as they are now once you're in your 40s. So it's just more like a nostalgia. So this could almost be like a movies that make me miss my childhood or movies that make me nostalgic in a way.
Yeah, I think I attack the list a little bit more like that. The movies that I just really remember from my childhood is more kind of how I built the list. Not necessarily miss, but certainly movies when I think about being a child and the movies that impacted me the most as a child. And we expanded the child, quote unquote, aspect of it a bit because we wanted to leak into like elementary, middle school, high school years. We kind of adolescence is thrown into that as well. But most of mine, I remember just being like some of my very first movie experiences. And obviously age is going to play a big part into this. So some of the people that are listening, you'll need to make your own childhood list. And this list might be more subjective than any other list we've ever done, because it has so much to do with when I saw it, how old I was when I saw it, how it made me feel as a child. If the protagonist in the movie is a child, that was a big thing, because I needed to connect it. Like if I am a 6 or 7 year old, it's going to be hard for me to connect with a 40-year-old businessman in a movie. But, another 6 or 7 year old, I'm going to instantly connect with. And that's why a lot of the movies that are on my list, not all of them, but a lot of them have either a child that's probably was my age at the time or very close in the movie that was the protagonist, the main character, or there's some kind of cute animal or something associated with this movie that made me really connect with it. So again, I think it might even have like a little psychology, like we're telling a little bit about ourselves, Mike, in revealing this list, because I think some of these movies may have built our psyches and our personalities a bit because they influenced it at such a young age that it kind of pushed us in certain directions just emotionally. And I'm wondering if people that are listening, and even maybe those that are in psychology or that kind of a thing, they could kind of determine some of our inner workings based on the movies that we picked.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we might be revealing a part of ourselves that we've never revealed before on this podcast. So it's a little vulnerable in that sense, but hey, these are the movies that I loved as a kid.
Well, I will say out of my 10, there's one movie on here that I saw like in my 30s for the first time because it's when it came out.
Wow.
But the principal cast are all middle school age. Everything else on this list, the other 9, are all movies I saw 14 years old or younger.
Okay.
So,
and I don't have any like that, but I do have movies that every one of these movies has a little story connected to it that really doesn't have anything to do with the movie, or a lot of them do at least.
But they're drug related, right? Cocaine?
No,
Okay.
no. I didn't start that till I was a teenager.
Got it.
No, just kidding. All right. All right, I'd love to hear your first one, Mike. What do you got first on the list on the top 10 movies that made me miss my childhood?
So this one is The Great Outdoors. I'm just going to jump right into the title with these. It's a John Candy classic. Rest in peace, one of the greatest comedians, in my opinion, of all time. Like great physical comedy, great comedic timing. And he's also a part of that iconic SNL crew from the 80s as well. I also hooked up with, Harold Ramis, Bill Murray, those guys. So to me, he's up there in the upper echelon of just greatest comedians on camera that I've ever seen.
Yes.
And this movie's
It's hard to explain to people how big John Candy was without.
you gotta see his stuff, man. Like, you have to see it. Uncle Buck is probably my all-time favorite John Candy movie. But again, he died he passed in the 90s.
Yes.
So everything he put out was in the 80s and 90s.
Mainly, his impact was mainly in the late 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
But we're talking old stuff here.
Yeah.
We're talking 80s stuff. And get prepared for that, folks. This is going to be a lot of old, specifically 80s kind of stuff. But hey, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Great Outdoors. So what was the, you saw this movie. What was kind of the impact on you as a child?
Well, looking back on it, it's about two families who go on this family vacation and they stay at this cabin. But the thing is, for me, we used to go on trips as I was a kid. I don't have a family now, so when I was a kid, we always went on family vacations. It was something you always looked forward to because you knew every summer we're gonna go somewhere. We're gonna go to Arkansas. We're gonna stay at this hotel or this cabin. We're gonna go to Denver. We're gonna go to San Antonio. It didn't matter where we went. We always just gonna make the best out of it. And we stayed at a few cabins. Even in present day, we go out to Broken Bow in Oklahoma and we're in a cabin and just kind of get away from everything, society. But with this movie specifically, they're out at this cabin and they do the fishing and they go to the local tavern and meet all the weird locals. And there's a subplot with the oldest son who meets this girl at their version of the Sonic and falls in love. And I've had vacations where I've experienced all those different things just in my adolescence, in my childhood growing up, and having a younger sibling like the older brother in this movie does. It just takes me back to when we used to always do that. And we don't really do those types of things near as much now as we used to. But as you get older, my sister has her own family, so there's this whole other aspect to it now that we have to take into consideration, which is fun. But as it ties to this movie in particular, I just will always remember and be fond of the trips that we took together as a family growing up.
And there's a nostalgic. I can get that. There's a nostalgic thing to it there. The camping trips, the family outings that were out in the woods, or permanently in the woods, or even just going outside to play. I think some of those things are lost because of the current technology. Really is kind of the thing. People on their phones playing video games. It wasn't, the phone thing didn't even exist back then, and or at least not on the level that it is today, anywhere close. And then the video game thing was just starting up during the 80s. And there were certainly video arcades, but that was still a social thing. You had to go out and do that. Whereas the home aspect of it was still really in its early stages. But so you had to go out and you had to go play. And I think it's part of the great outdoors. Part of it now has become really a niche thing because it just doesn't feel like it can ever be the same because everybody has to be so connected now through the internet, through Wi-Fi and all that. You can get lost on your phone, even in the middle of the woods. You can still be lost on your phone, right? So I love that answer because it reminded me of some of my childhood events and reminded me about camping and the things that we used to do. And we don't do that at all anymore. So I'm not a camping guy, but there's this nostalgic thing about that. You mentioned San Antonio, and that ties great into my first movie because it was filmed in San Antonio. And the name of the movie is Cloak and Dagger. It came out in 1984. And it starred Henry Thomas, who was coming off of his biggest movie that he'd ever done, which was E.T., and Dabney Coleman, who's some of you know Dabney Coleman's name. Most recently, he plays the father on Yellowstone, but he was best known back then for Tootsie and 9 to 5, and a film called War Games with Matthew Broderick. One of the best films that I've seen him in was a movie that nobody even really knows about. It's called Short Time, where he is
You have a knack for finding the most obscure films I've never heard of.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have some of the more obscure films that didn't never get transferred to DVD or Blu-ray, and you won't find them on streaming services. Are some of my favorite ish films. Um, Dabney Coleman in Cloak and Dagger. Cloak and Dagger is a kid-centric movie surrounding Henry Thomas, who ironically the whole reason they did this movie, they wrote it for Henry Thomas. Henry Thomas' hometown is in San Antonio, so they wrote the movie and to be filmed in San Antonio so it would accommodate him because it was a Henry Thomas vehicle basically. And this movie, I haven't said what it's about, is basically about an imaginary friend. And Henry Thomas's character has an imaginary friend whose name is Jack Flack, and he's this military super soldier. And Jack Flack helps him in aspects of his life, and there's a video game. This is really cool. This is very niche, but there's a Atari kind of video game store. Henry Thomas gets his hands on a video game cartridge that is like a rare cartridge, and ends up there's some secret military stuff on this cartridge that's hidden, and so there's a kind of an espionage thing, trying to track down this kid with the Atari cartridge, video game cartridge, and so this kid by himself is trying to outmaneuver these spies and things, but he's doing it with the aid of his super soldier imaginary friend.
Probably Russian spies, because it's the 80s.
I can't remember. But at the end of the movie, by the end of the movie, you find out that the person that Jack Flack is based on is his military father, who shows up at the end to save him. So it's a good, very niche, very dated movie. If you watched it today, it would look so dated. But if you've ever been to San Antonio, you're going to recognize the Riverwalk, recognize things. You'll recognize the Alamo, of course. They weren't actually allowed access into the Alamo, so they had to reconstruct it, the insides of it for the movie's sake. But you'll see the outside. So a lot of San Antonio things, and a movie for me that I really loved because of the whole imaginary. To think that you had an imaginary friend that could help you get out of these kind of situations was intriguing to me. And the guy was so cool, and I don't remember ever having an imaginary friend as a child, but I do remember having such a vivid imagination that I could to pass the time a lot of the times, that I would imagine even things like walking down the halls at my school. I'd be imagining other stuff. So I do remember having a vivid imagination, but not necessarily an imaginary friend. So
Well, maybe you didn't have an imaginary friend because you actually had a dad.
maybe.
This kid didn't have a dad. He didn't know his dad was out there, so that's why.
Yeah, I know his dad just worked a lot, and I can't remember if they had suffered a tragedy, like the mother had passed away or not. I can't quite remember it. Again, this is a childhood movie. I hadn't seen it in years. But Cloak and Dagger always has a special place in my heart for there's a nostalgia factor for that I really love. So when I think about my childhood, Cloak and Dagger brings me back there instantly.
Okay. It's a great choice. I've seen it, but of course it was back then.
30.
So some of the stuff you were just saying, I was remembering as you said it.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't have been able to sum it up. So your recall's better than mine. So
Well, I tried to do a little bit. I couldn't watch all of these movies again before this list came out, but I tried to watch some things about them, interviews, and
You are such a front of the class, dude. I'm telling you, man.
no. I just don't want to. In past top tens, I've just fumbled through stories, or I've forgotten things that have happened in the moment, or I get the actor's name wrong, and I'm just trying to negate some of those errors.
I got you. That's a great choice, though.
Thank you.
Second on my list is The Sandlot. I think it's just iconic, no matter what age you are. I mean, maybe if you're 25 years old hearing this today, maybe not so much. But I think if you're born in the 90s, you at least have some point of reference with this movie. There was a sequel that nobody really references.
A lot of sequels don't get referenced.
That's a fact. It's a fact. But this one is iconic for me specifically because I was 13, 14 years old when this came out. So I'm like transitioning from middle school to high school.
Were you playing baseball in the streets or anything like that?
I did all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually, my freshman year of high school, I signed up for baseball, and I mean it didn't last no long. It lasted maybe 4 weeks. When coach said that they were going to start making practices 3 hours long after school, I said, "No, I'm out. Like this is not what I signed up for. I wasn't prepared for that. You can't give us a month of just an hour and a half practice and then say, okay, well now we're going into the fall, 3 hour long practices. I still have homework and I still got friends on the block I want to play with. And if I had to go to 3 hour practices, it's gonna be dark when I get home, so I'm not gonna be able to kick it with my friends on the street. So no, I'm out. I'm out. I have a social life, even at 14. But yeah, this movie, it's probably the epitome of my childhood because I had about 7 or 8 friends on my street who we would always get together and play baseball. Baseball and basketball were probably the two sports we played the most. But eventually it got to a point where whatever sport was in season, basketball, football, baseball, soccer, hockey, no, not so much soccer, but even hockey, we would play that sport while that sport was in season in real life.
Nice.
But then once this movie came out, I mean, a lot of my friends were younger than me, so they were in middle school, elementary school even, like fifth grade, fourth grade. And so we had enough of us to kind of do like a 9 guys, one guy at every position kind of thing, and then we would do like 3-on-3 or 4-on-4. So there's gaps in the outfield because you got a little 12-year-old trying to cover left and right field, and the other guy trying to cover center and right field. So, but it was fun. We made the best of it. That was usually in the summer, so it was hot. So we did that. I even went through like a little phase, like the lead or the coolest kid in this movie. His name is Benny. He's like the all-star that all the younger kids in this movie look up to.
Yeah.
Like he had like a certain like swag, like the way he dressed.
I had a Dodgers jersey.
Yeah, like little button-up shirt with open and the sleeves rolled up. Like I remember after I watched this movie, I raided my dad's closet. Any like button-up shirts that you could like roll the sleeves up on, I would wear those outside. And I made sure to ask him if they were like old shirts he didn't wear anymore. He just still had them like in a drawer somewhere. And I said, hey, can I have these? He probably thought, oh, look at my son trying to dress, a little nice. No, it's not. It's not to look nice.
It's for the Sandlot.
Yeah, it's to go get dirty and since you don't care, I don't care
Yeah,
either. So yeah, I went through that little phase, but like this is probably the movie that sums up my childhood in terms of like hanging out with people in my neighborhood the most.
And I do. That reminds me as you were speaking of all the guys that I hung out with, all the girls that we were crushed on, and we were sneaking over to like sleepovers and stuff.
Yep.
And playing until the lights came on, and we'd play. I asked you if you played baseball in the streets. That's how we played it.
That's how we did
in
too.
The streets.
Yeah.
Like we played basketball in the streets. We played football in the streets. Football was our biggest thing to play.
Mm-hmm.
But baseball, I remember hitting a baseball and hitting somebody's car with my baseball. That was not a good day to come home to. We didn't play hockey, but we played the rollerblades and those. The hockey played with a ball instead of a
that's
puck.
what I meant. Yeah, obviously we didn't have an ice rink in the street.
Yeah,
We played rollerball. Yeah,
rollerball. Yeah,
Yeah.
Is that what they call it? Rollerball.
Mm-hmm.
That's we played that.
I was horrible at that, by the way. Rollerblading and trying to control this ball with a hockey stick. Yeah. I was horrible at all that.
Dude, so that and the Sandlot reminds me of all of that. I did want to ask you this now. At the end of the Sandlot, if you can remember, they do a summary of how everybody grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like it was a little like Stand By Me. Stand By Me had that same
It did.
kind of thing. Did it?
Yeah.
But in the Stand By Me, it was a famous actor at the end, like typing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he was the guy from Jaws.
Roy Schneider?
No, Richard Dreyfuss, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was there anybody at the end of Sandlot that was actually narrating, or was it just a narrator?
So in the movie, the guy that plays Smalls, Smalls is the new kid in town, and he gets integrated in this group of friends.
Yes.
So Smalls grows up to be like a Chicago Cubs sports announcer, kind of like the Harry Carey of this movie cinematic universe, and the kid that has showed the most promise in this group, Benny, he ends up playing for the Dodgers.
Yes, I do remember.
Yeah, so Smalls at the end is commentating on Benny. I think he even makes a reference to something from back in their childhood.
Okay, so he's writing a sports story.
Yeah,
right?
that's what it is.
Summarizing it up.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. I love it. That was great. Okay. Something that's not going to have anything to do with any kind of childhood memory other than my own is the movie Blue Thunder. It's number 2 on my list. Not that these are numbered at all. It kind of ranked, but Blue Thunder, 1983. Stars Roy Schneider, Daniel Stern, Malcolm McDowell. Directed by John Badham. Badham famously directed Saturday Night Fever. Also did War Games, which we mentioned already before. And Badham also is going to direct something that's further down my list that I won't give away yet. But Blue Thunder is about a military helicopter. This thing was freaking awesome, this helicopter. It had silent mode. It had X-ray vision. It had an awesome Gatling gun at the front of it on the nose that could be pointed in all different directions. Look, this thing was like a tank.
You remember Airwolf?
Air. Yes, and that's what I was going to mention too.
Okay.
Is that this is the time, this is right during the time where Knight Rider and Airwolf were big, and I was watching both of those. And so it just fit into that, but it threw in a bit of more, because it had somebody like Roy Schneider in it, it was a little bit more, it was way more adult. And this was a military vehicle, and it was kind of like used for like inner city assault almost. It was going to be, it was really controversial within the movie itself, to the point where Snyder, by the end of it, has to destroy it to protect what he feels is the American people, I guess, or people's civil rights, because they were going to do something really wrong with this vehicle by the end of it. But I'm not trying to even wrap up or give a summary of what the movie is. I just remember as a kid, and why I missed it as a kid, because the actual helicopter itself, it's just iconic in my mind. It's just was one of the coolest vehicles during a time where specifically television shows like Knight Rider, like Airwolf, like one that not a lot of people remember called Street Hawk with a motorcycle.
I remember that.
Okay, those were big. And so vehicles that were out of the norm, that had a crime fighting function, were big at the time. And this was one of the probably the most iconic movie versions of that ever happened. And actually, it is an adult movie. I should not have probably seen it as a kid, but I think it's maybe the first time I ever saw a naked lady or saw a sexual situation as a child. This might have been it, because at one point in the movie they go into silent mode and they're searching the city for crime, and they come across a lady undressing in a skyscraper, and they like spend a moment zooming in on that.
Of course.
Because it was the 80s and that stuff happened back then, and it still does. I'm not saying it only happens then. And it was simple as a lady undressing, but it was still enough to where, as a child, you're like, oh, it's provocative. And and how the adult men were acting in the helicopter towards her.
Of course.
It kind of informed, like, okay, this is something that's not naughty but provocative, and that men like women. You know what I mean?
Did you see this with your parents?
I'm sure that I did. I can't imagine that I saw it by myself.
I want to know what the reaction was when this scene comes up.
Now, probably as it is now.
Okay.
If you ever watch it with someone else, you just silently don't say, respond to it.
You get awkward. You don't look the other way.
I think when I was younger, my parents would be like, all right, close your eyes.
Yeah.
It's basically to be the thing. And maybe they made me do that, and then in subsequent watched viewings as I've gotten older, then that pops into my head of that. Maybe that's why maybe I didn't see her as a child, but I definitely know it's in the movie.
Right.
It stands out to me. But Blue Thunder, simply for the iconic vehicle itself, not necessarily for the movie itself, because it was a more adult type movie. But yeah, that's it.
You know what comes after that reminds me of this? Because you talked about how that was a big thing back in the day, was having vehicles fight crime that could do all these different things. The cartoon Mask.
I love Mask.
Every vehicle in that cartoon could turn into something different.
Yes.
And they were to fight this evil organization, kind of G.I. Joe-esque.
Well, it was really more, I think it was based on Transformers a little bit more.
Yeah, we had Transformers at the same time too. Yeah. You remember GoBots, the knockoff Transformers?
I do remember them, but I don't remember much about them.
Yeah, they didn't last very long. But yeah, that was all like in the same 5 or 6 year span in the 80s. I just remember all that.
Robotech.
Robotech for sure, yeah.
I remember that too. All right, what's your third one then?
This one you're going to absolutely love.
Ooh.
And you may even have it on your list. I'll be shocked if you don't. This is Arnold Schwarzenegger, like right at his peak. He gets a little middle school age sidekick, and it kind of goes meta. This movie is The Last Action Hero.
Not on my list.
This is not on your list?
No,
You love this movie, absolutely. Okay, all right. this movie comes out in 93, 94. Again, like I said, right at the pinnacle of the Arnold, Sylvester, who's more macho, and you throw in some Bruce Willis in there from Die Hard. But, I mean, for much of the mid to late 80s and even the 90s, it was Schwarzenegger and Stallone were like the alpha male, macho guy, high testosterone. I'm going to be able to take out 1 million people, and, I could do all these amazing things. And this is kind of one of those movies. You may be able to explain it better because I know this is higher up on your list than mine, but it's the fact that this came out around the same time as transitioning again from middle school to high school, 13, 14. Just the idea of being such a huge fan, one of cinema, because the kid in this movie is a big fan of movies, specifically action movies. Help me out. What is Schwarzenegger's name in these movies? Is it Jack something?
I've never seen this movie.
You've never seen The Last Action Hero? You're lying to me. No, we're going to end the podcast and fight. We're going to fight, swear to God. We've discussed this a million times.
I was going to say why I haven't seen it.
Okay, all right, fine. I have alien implants, I guess, putting memories in that I don't remember.
No. I have never seen the movie. I remember that it got universally panned when it came out. Like, it was destroyed. And I'm a little bit older than you, so I was aged out of wanting to see myself in that child, or not even a child. I think he was like 12 or 13 in the movie. I can't remember how old he was.
This is insane. You're really telling me you've never seen this?
I was a bit aged out of that, and I didn't connect with it, and because of the reviews, I never saw it.
I feel like I'm being betrayed. I'm
sorry, dude, but this is your movie.
It is. But I would bet everything in my bank account, which isn't much, but it's significant, that we have discussed this movie many times, and you're the one that's brought it up. And you're telling me you've never seen it.
Maybe another podcast.
All right. So anyway, this movie's about a little kid. He's a big theater guy. He goes to this theater that's run by this old timer. He runs and he puts this movie on just for this little kid because he sees how enamored this kid is with cinema and the magic of movies. And his favorite movie character is this Arnold Schwarzenegger character. So there's no Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is all like a movie universe. And so what happens is, I forgot to do some kind of magic. This kid gets transported into movie world. And in this movie world, he actually gets to team up with Arnold Schwarzenegger's character, which I think it is Jack something. I can't remember his last name, so forgive me. And he's trying to explain to Jack this whole time that this world is fake. It's not real. You're in a movie. And then we even get all these cameos. We get Robert Patrick as the T-1000 walking out of the police station. And he's like, he's in that movie. You fought this guy. You killed this guy at the end of, and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. All this and that. And by the end of it, then there's a reversal, and the Grim Reaper actually gets to enter the real world. And so they got to stop him. So Jack and this kid come back into this kid's universe, and they try to stop, the Grim Reaper and all this and that. And there's a scene where
the actual Grim Reaper is just some villain called Grim Reaper. Right?
Yeah, but as in the movie, in the movie universe, it's the real Grim Reaper. He's killing people.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm really kind of mind blown and flabbergasted. I can't even speak because I could have sworn that this is one of your top 10 movies of all time. We discussed it many times.
No.
But anyway, it's on this because it just makes me think of all the movies I've seen where as a kid thinking, oh man, this guy is so cool. This character is so cool. I would love to just spend the day with this person in this fake character's life.
I think I've seen some scenes from it because some of that rings a little bit of a bell, but it might have just been the trailer or something like that.
Like, I'm literally like, okay, wow, what is going on?
I'm sorry, man. I haven't seen The Great Outdoors either, so I haven't seen either of those those movies either. So
you got homework to do after this.
I've got some things to watch. All right, next one should be pretty quick. The Never Ending Story, 1984. This is like one of those movies that's like it's supposed to make children want to read kind of a movie, but it's about a young child who has lost his mother. His father's kind of checked out, and so he's really mourning the loss of his mother by himself, doesn't know how to do it, and is being picked on at school and bullied, and he gets himself into a situation where he has to go into this bookstore, and he's introduced to this book. It's called The Never Ending Story. The old man bookkeeper there is kind of crotchety, but he kind of finagles the young man to get to this never-ending story book, and the kid steals it, basically, takes it to his school, I don't know why you would skip school and still be in the school, but he basically goes to an attic in the school and he reads this book throughout the school day, even to past like into the night. He's reading the story, and it's a story about a land called Fantasia, not the American Idol winner, the actual that land. There's this land, and it's full of these magical creatures that Tim Burton would love. Some of these wild creatures that are in this movie.
Some are terrifying.
Some are terrifying. Some are like the there's a lucky dragon dog. That's my favorite. That looks like my dog that I have now.
Isn't his back like made of like pearls?
Scales.
Scales, yeah, made of pearls. Ridiculous,
Scales,
yeah.
I think this might have been a Jim Henson thing, but maybe not. Don't hold me on that. But it has a similar feel of that puppetry. That it wasn't super special effects laden. It was more real world type
Practical effects.
puppets,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
makeup. And it's the 80s, so there's a big element of fear that's in there, which I don't agree with, scaring children. But that was a big thing in the 80s. They loved to do. They loved to scare
I
children.
bet that messed you up as a kid then.
It does.
Yeah.
It really does. I mean, look, you want to be scared as an adult from a children's movie. Go watch the sequel for the Wizard of Oz from the late 80s.
I love that movie. Return to
It was
Oz.
friggin'
It
scare
is.
you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Well, it's
I'm
also
not
much
gonna
more
hold-
realistic to the actual story too than the originals.
Right, yeah, but it is still, the imagery is haunting. But no, back to the never-ending story. So basically, the kid's reading the story, and he's reading this story about saving this kingdom, and he doesn't realize that he's part of this story. And at the end of the movie, the key thing is that this boy who's reading it and has been going through this story emotionally throughout the whole movie is tied into the land Fantasia, and that he's the only one that can actually save it himself. And so that's basically the idea of it. And it's just, again, a child protagonist reading a book that comes alive, that makes the child the hero, which is so appealing as a kid. Does have some haunting imagery in it as well. There are some scary moments. There's this giant wolf, black wolf.
And that's what I'm thinking
chasing
of.
him the entire time. And there's a heartbreaking scene that they say that adults can't even watch nowadays. If they watch it as a kid, there's a horse that actually dies in this movie. Like the hero's horse in this movie dies
Oh,
in the mud.
stuck in the mud.
drowned.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they say even now, adults will walk out of the room when that part of the movie comes up because that's so triggering, that part of the movie.
Childhood trauma still there?
Yeah.
Really?
So I'm not recommending the movie as a watch, but this is just one of the movies that reminds me of my childhood, the never-ending story. Even to the point where I wanted a dog that looked like the dragon, and I have one now, so that might be.
You
one of the
can't
reasons
you
why,
can't
but-
tell listeners you have a dog that looks like a dragon, bro. They're gonna believe you.
Well, this particular dragon didn't look like a dragon.
Okay.
This dragon in the movie looked like a poodle.
Okay. You can't lie to the audience like that though.
It's not a lie. Go watch it for yourself.
Oh, okay, all right.
Your eyes will be open to the truth. What's your number 4?
You and your dragon dog. So just real quick, the best thing, not the best thing, but the movie is the never-ending story. But by the end of it, the story ends. So
Well, yeah, but see, the thing is that, do you remember there's a part in the movie where the Fantasyland hero sees everything that happened in the movie on a wall that's been painted by his aunt? So, in the idea, what I've heard is that means that this has happened before. This exact thing has happened before, and it'll happen again and again and again in the exact same way. So that's why it's the never-ending story.
got it. Next one for me is, now this one I know for certain we've discussed, and you were not a fan of it. This is about a group of late middle school age kids, maybe early like freshmen, high school kids, all coming together to make a movie. And this is a J.J. Abrams, Steven Spielberg collaboration. There, I see your face. Now you remember, this is Super 8. This is the one on the list I referenced earlier where I said I saw this in my 30s because this is when it came out.
Stranger Things did a similar formula.
Yeah, but it just makes me think about childhood, reminisce about childhood because you're on this adventure with your group of friends and you go through all these crazy things. And a lot of that,
Bikes.
yeah, riding bikes is the thing you did, as a kid with your friends. So this movie just reminds me of that. Regardless of the story, there is an alien in this movie. There is like a
Yeah, and you didn't know what it was. I know in the early trailers it didn't show what it was.
but you knew it was gonna be a monster because J.J. Abrams was attached.
I guess so.
So I mean,
Although he had done other stuff too, like Alias, right? And
yeah,
stuff like that.
but this was right after, or not right after. This is a few years after Cloverfield. So he was still very much in his monster bag. And
Far superior movie, man. But go ahead.
Cloverfield? Oh, 100%. Yeah. Actually, that's we'll get to that in another episode. Oh yeah, little tease there.
Yeah.
No, this it's the idea of going on these crazy adventures with your friends. The only way you have to travel really anywhere is your bike. If it's longer than like a short walk, like we used to walk to, like the little convenience stores, like a few blocks down the road.
Yeah.
Like load up on Powerade, Gatorade, whatever. I'm so
Pack of cards.
we're old enough to now. We remember when Powerade was first came out. That's how old you and I are.
I remember Crystal Pepsi, baby.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, Crystal Pepsi and Gatorade. Oh, and then when Powerade dropped, it was like, oh, this is the thing. This is like the new drug. This is the kids' drug. But anyway, riding our bikes was like the number one way to get from A to B. I mean, you even had kids ride their bikes to school, which doesn't
Good
happen
cardio
now.
we had back then.
Oh man, I was in the best shape of my life at that age. Man, you kidding me? Yeah, if I had to run from here to the car, I wouldn't make it.
I had to go uphill.
No, that's when you had the 18 speed and you could like shift down to the easy.
Had that, dude.
You didn't have that?
No.
No, I told my parents, listen, if you're buying me a bike, you got to give me the 18 speed because all my friends have 18
That
speeds.
raw chain, buddy.
Ooh, that's rough. Nah, man. Yo, and then remember if the chain comes off, how hard it was to get that back on the.
Yeah, it never happened to me. So.
Oh, really? Okay, if you had 18 speed problems, I guess.
Yeah, I guess 18. Yeah. Chain ain't one though.
No, hey, I like to look at you. All right. No, but I actually I haven't really recommended any of these, but I recommend this one just because there's a nostalgia to it that I think allows you to tap into your inner childhood even as an adult, because that's kind of what happened for me. I was 30-something years old when this came
I felt
out.
that too, even though I didn't care for the movie. I felt that too.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's a whole monster element to it. There's a love interest element to it.
For movie making, filmmaking.
And I love movies about making movies. Yeah, so this kind of goes right in the vein of movies that I love anyway. So yeah, sure. Again, this is kind of going back to the Sandlot, where it's like it reminds me of my friends in the neighborhood and riding bikes to different places and things of that nature. So
Nice. All right, my next movie is E.T. the Extraterrestrial from 1982. Not because I necessarily like the movie, is because that summer that it came out, I'm pretty sure
81 or 82?
82.
82, yeah.
It was the biggest movie. Like it seemed like it was bigger than Star Wars. It was so huge, and E.T. Merchandise was everywhere. And I specifically remember this movie because I had an E.T. hat. And here's a nostalgia for you. They're still around, but I lost this ET hat at a 7-Eleven, and I was playing a video game, a stand-up arcade game at a 7-Eleven in 1982. I put my hat down, or put it up on the top of the cabinet to play.
You were serious? You took the hat off?
Yeah, I took the hat off. Forgot that I took the hat off. So my parents, we drove there, and so I forgot it as we pulled away about 5 minutes away, and parents turned around to go back to get the hat because I loved the hat, and it was gone. Somebody had stolen it, and that stuck with me ever since. Like that, E.T. loved that hat. That was my hat. And it got stolen, and it was like one of the first ever, maybe the first time I ever had anything stolen from me. And so that is edged into my memory about that E.T. I love the hat. That's why the movie connects me to my childhood, I think, because of that incident. The movie itself is a good movie. It was iconic. I went to Universal Studios like 20 years later, and they had an E.T. experience there. And when you're waiting in line in that E.T. experience, you're in the woods. And there's every once in a while there's a flashlight, or you can hear kids running, or you hear cops echoing in the background because they're searching for ET in the woods. And you're in line, and you end up the ride itself is you being on the bike and getting to fly in the air with ET at the front of your little bike basket.
Okay.
But no, the movie was arguably prime Steven Spielberg. It was a prime child wonderment. If you were a child in 1882, you watched E.T. most likely, and so it's kind of connected with everybody like Star Wars connects with everybody now. At the time, if you grew up in that time, E.T. impacted you in some way, and then that's how it impacted me.
Okay, very nice. Next one for me. This is the only one where the main kids in this movie are a little bit older, because you're not trying to get your license at 12, 13, 14 years old. Usually you get your learner's permit around 15, 16-ish.
15, yeah.
Yeah, I actually got my driver's license at 16. And it was shortly after we moved from Fort Worth here to Tyler.
Why are you doxing us?
I just gave it away where we are. I mean, the city, but they don't know the exact location. They'll never know that. But this movie's License to Drive.
Okay, is this with Alicia Silverstone?
No, this is Corey Haim.
Corey Haim. Okay.
And the Coreys.
Okay.
Corey Haim, Corey Feldman. Yeah. Rest in peace, Corey Haim. And I don't remember anybody else in this movie as far as who's famous or not.
I thought it was just... yeah, go ahead.
But it's about the two Coreys, and Corey Haim's character is trying to get his license. It's just that time he's of age, and he takes the test, and he's got the cliche older sister who's always ragging on him, giving him a hard time. She's got the nerdy big...
The Ferris Bueller sister.
Thank you, yes. He goes to take the test. He actually fails, and when he fails, he gets his score at the end. It's like one of those rooms where you've got old school computers all lined up down the row. He gets his failing grade. He stands up and slams the computer with his hand, and the system just all goes out in the whole room. So they don't know his score, so somehow he still gets his license. They just issue it. Yeah.
Okay.
So even though he didn't pass the test. And the whole deal is he's trying to impress this girl. Her name is Mercedes. I remember that because I'd never heard of a girl's name Mercedes before in my life.
Yeah.
I always just thought, oh, this is the car.
Yeah.
So it was like unique to me even at that age. And so he doesn't have a car. He steals his parents' vehicle, which is like an old, like, extended, like, Buick LeSabre or something, like a long car. Mm-hmm. And he sneaks it out of his parents' house, and he picks up his friend, the other Corey, and they go pick up Mercedes, and they go out, like, on this one night of adventure. And I love movies that take place in, like, one
Adventures
night.
and babysitting type thing.
Kind of thing, yeah. And the whole time he's trying to make sure that nothing happens to the car, because it's not his, it's in mint condition.
Yeah.
And, of course, when that happens, it gets introduced, everything happens to this car. They get into a high-speed chase, and hubcaps are flying off, and there's scrapes, and all these other things happen in the movie.
Do they somehow, by the end of it, able to, like, fix it?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course, yeah. But it makes me think of when I got my license and how completely opposite my life was to this movie when I got my license. Like, I had just moved here, so I didn't know anybody. But it made me think of that movie because it's one of those moments, okay, they got their license, I'm getting my license. So it's kind of like what you say, you relate to certain characters in the movie just through experiences that you share with them. Whether they're real for the character or not, because it's fiction, you still have a way to, like, tap into realism of a movie and connect in that way.
Okay, nice. My next movie is called The Man from Snowy River. It's an Australian Western movie that was recommended to me by my pastor at the time. And I think if I remember correctly, he actually recommended the sequel to this movie, which is Return to Snowy River, because that came out in the early 90s, I believe. But this original movie stars Kirk Douglas, directed by George T. Miller, a different George Miller. And this basically is just about a movie about... well, here's what I remember about the movie. Maybe there's a better way of putting this. It's a beautifully cinematography movie. It is just beautifully open country. It's about a young man just trying to make his way. He falls in love. He just wants a land of his own. And there's obviously some like tribulations and things that he goes through, and an old friend that he relies on, Kirk Douglas. But it's just kind of an old-fashioned Western type movie that was just good family, wholesome storytelling.
Why is this Australian, by the way? Kirk Douglas is not Australian.
No, it's just, I think it was, I'm fairly certain it was filmed in Australia.
Oh, got it.
Takes
Okay.
place in Australia.
I see what you mean.
Has I think, an entirely Australian cast, except for Kirk Douglas, who's the only recognizable name that we would know in the movie.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it's just like good, wholesome storytelling. And that's what I remember about it, is that I have a fondness in my heart for that movie because it just was like, the story of every kind of like blue collar young man trying to make his way, trying to have his own ranch, trying to build his own land, trying to find his own love, and the struggles that come against him trying to do that.
Right.
So, and one that's connected with me, and that was one of the ones that I saw as I guess, an adolescent. This came out in '82, but I think I saw the sequel in '92 before I saw the original. But it's one of those that it's better to see the original to be more informed about what's happening. But both movies are really good, and I can't recommend them enough. So, The Man from Snowy River, Return to Snowy River, Australian Western dramas, which are really good.
Okay. Next on my list is, I think, beloved across the board, if you've seen it. This one came out during my childhood years, but I didn't see it until 30 years after it came out. So I don't have the same appreciation for it as if I had seen it when it first came out. But this is the Goonies.
Good.
Yeah, it's still, so there is an ever building list of movies that people are shocked that I haven't seen. I'm kind of shocked because, like, why haven't I gotten around to these other movies? But we've had conversations in the past before where, we talk about certain movies that are iconic for the time it came out, meaning either the era it came out or like the age that you were when it came out. So the relatability may not be there, it may not exist if you see it out of time, so to speak. So this is kind of one of those for me, but I remember when I saw it, it was in a theater during the pandemic when the theaters were just playing old movies for like $5, I actually saw it at Grand Slam. It was my first time going to Grand Slam. We're giving away all the locations today, y'all. But I saw it with a couple of friends, and of course they had seen it 100 times over the years, through childhood to adulthood. And I just was like, let me just go see what this movie's about. I always hear about it. It's on all these lists of most iconic movies of the 80s and most memorable of the 80s. And knowing that they had seen it, it's like, okay, I'll get to experience the movie firsthand, but also through them as well, because it's such a beloved movie for them. So it did add a level of excitement to me. And I probably wouldn't have seen this on my own, but the fact that they were going and they invited me, I said, okay, I'll go. And I actually really enjoyed it. And then being with these three other guys that I saw it with, I kind of felt like we were transported in the movie with them and with the characters.
Okay. Back in time a bit.
Yes, a little bit. And seeing their excitement for it, even knowing that they've seen it a million times. And then me, it's fresh. And again, it's one of those adventures with your friends. And you more often than not, in that age group, when you have adventures with your friends, you're getting caught up in shenanigans that you probably shouldn't be getting caught up in, that will get you grounded, get you in trouble, that kind of thing. And a lot of that happens in this movie. But these kids are obviously looking for like treasure that is on this map, and it's this pirate ship full of gold, and there's these three bumbling idiots after them and after the gold. This movie really doesn't need that much explanation to me.
No.
Everybody knows what this is or has like some point of reference about what this movie's about. But again, it ties into everything else on the list so far, is just being with your friends and getting caught up in these shenanigans, and really no adults to supervise.
Yeah, and this is this that make you miss your childhood, and there's certain, even though you missed this as a child, that you saw it later on in life and it made you nostalgic for those times again.
Yes.
And then probably the situation, seeing it with friends, and seeing it in the pandemic also all played a part into it as well, because we were so isolated. So to go see a movie with your friends during the pandemic, that would have meant a lot more than just normal.
That's true.
Viewing.
You're right. Yeah.
I saw this movie as a child as well, and my parents were really movie freaks. Now I think about it, because I think we still just saw everything, and we saw, I likely saw this at a drive-through theater.
I've never been to a drive-thru ever.
You need to treat yourself.
Yeah,
treat yourself, especially on a date. You're surprised how intimate that can be.
Right.
To be sitting in a car with someone special and having what it feels like the theater to yourself.
Right.
It's really cool.
Okay.
If there are any around anymore.
Well, there used to be one here, but that was.
And I went there a few times.
Oh, did you? Okay.
It's good. It's always fun. It's always, it just gets you out of the norm.
There's one that exists here in town, but I don't go to those kinds of movie theaters.
Yeah, that one's, I don't even know how that was still up and running.
I feel filthy driving past it.
Yes, I do
that
too.
way.
It looks like you would require some kind of a shot to go in and a shot to come out, just to protect yourself from
For sure.
Just from the rusty nails and things. It looks like it's probably around. All right. My next movie is, I don't know if this counted or not because it's not a theatrical release, but it was a made-for-TV movie, so it's a
A
movie.
movie, yeah.
It's a Disney movie. I was surprised at how many movies were Disney movies because I am not a big Disney guy. I like the Marvel stuff, but I know it's part of Disney now, but I don't really consider them quote unquote Disney necessarily.
You're talking about more
movies.
traditional Disney.
Tradition. Yeah, I'm surprised at how many on my list that we're about to get into were all Disney based, but kind of makes sense because of the age that we're talking about. But this movie's called Not Quite Human, 1987, made for TV movie starring Jay Underwood, Alan Thicke, and Robin Lively. This is a movie about a kind of a kooky scientist who creates an android son, and that android son now has to learn how to go to school, and it's like high school, and he's got his like sister who's a real human, and she has to act like this is her brother, and he becomes her brother. He becomes part of the family, and to watch this android like bumble through life and try to figure things out and take things literally and like do some kind of amazing things too. Anyway, he gets to the point where like the most attractive girl at school likes him, and like, he's going to take her to the dance and that kind of thing, and he's got to learn how to dance. He's got to learn all these things, and by the end of it, it's just a good, nice, wholesome story. If you can kind of suspend belief a little bit about this being an android, 'cause it looks so human. But again, the movie's not quite human because he's still trying to tackle what it is to be human, and his name is Chip. So there you go.
Yeah.
That should tell you how kind of corny that this movie is. But I really like this movie. There's a scene where there's a kind of a fight over a girl at a fast food restaurant, and they say let's flip for it, some kind of flip for kind of thing, and he actually physically does a flip. And it's so impressive, and he instantly wins without having to flip a coin because he's like this cool. But he doesn't know he's being cool. He's just taking things literally,
Right.
as a robot.
As robots do. Yeah.
And of course, there's some like somebody trying to discover, trying to get Chip to like reproduce him or get some of the technology. So there's kind of that angle of it going as well. But anyway, just a nice, wholesome, made-for-TV Disney movie that involves a kind of a sci-fi aspect of it to it, with the android part of it, and trying to navigate, what high school stuff was back in '87. So, there you
A couple quick things.
go. You remember that part, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I'm wondering if you're even shocked that I saw this movie because I do remember it. Actually, it's funny. As soon as you said the title, I instantly remembered, like you said, Alan Thicke, you said Blake Lively, Jay Underwood. Is this Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds' wife?
No, this is Robin Lively, which is another actress.
Oh, okay, I know who she is. Okay, I thought you said Blake. It doesn't matter.
Oh, easily confused.
Yeah.
Although she probably would have not even been born yet, maybe.
Or like 3, maybe. Yeah. No, but I do remember this movie. You said the flip for it. I remember the backflip scene. I don't know why. It's weird what your memory retains, your brain retains. But yeah, that's a good movie. I remember. I didn't know it was Disney. I forgot it was Disney.
Yeah.
So see, there's some wholesomeness in my soul somewhere. See,
No, that much.
I mean, it's enough to hold on to that one movie. That's about it. That's a great choice, though.
Thank you.
Next one for me. Again, I think this is iconic. This is another sports movie. I know how you feel about sports.
I love 'em.
So earlier we talked about when my Sandlot era, we did all the sports that were in season: hockey, football, baseball, basketball, and this is what got me into hockey. And
I know this one.
this stars Emilio Estevez, and this is about a guy who's like this hotshot lawyer, and he's got to do it's probation, not probation, but community service.
Yes.
He has to basically coach this ragtag team of hockey kids.
Now, he's a former professional hockey player.
Yeah, this is the Mighty Ducks.
Gordon Bombay.
That's a great name, by the way.
It is.
It sounds like an ex.
The
A
triple
professional-
D was his move.
Yeah, it was his move.
Yeah.
Which now, by the way, basically was just like an obsolete move. It just would never work.
I don't know. I don't.
You don't watch enough hockey? Oh, okay. Yeah. But this is the movie that actually got me into like actually watching hockey. I know it may come as a shock to some of the black listeners out there, but yes, Mike watches hockey. I don't watch it like I used to, but I went through a phase. Also because when this movie came out, it actually was part 2 that came out when they had the actual Anaheim Mighty Ducks expansion team in the NHL.
Yeah, that's right.
But so the jerseys in this movie are just basically basic. This is also a Disney movie though. It's on Disney Plus. And again, this is about a ragtag group of kids coming together, united.
Yeah, they have a team, but it's like they're not coached, or their coach fell out, or something happened. They're not well structured. And
Yeah, they're super trash.
yeah, they're not good. And the other team they're facing is like really good.
Yeah.
Right?
But again, it falls in line with camaraderie and being with your friends, because these guys obviously are friends, and like I said, it got me into hockey. I can't say if I remember if I knew what hockey even was. I don't know at the time.
Oh, the street. That's right around when the street hockey stuff started happening too.
Yeah,
So that kind of tied in together with me. It's like I couldn't do ice hockey,
right.
but I could do street hockey.
Yeah, but I mean, this movie just made me. I want to say fall in love with hockey, because I mean I watched hockey. It's like it's 3 hours where it could be 0-0, and most people say, "Oh, I watch it for the fights," and the fights are cool, but it is almost like poetry in motion to what these guys can do, especially nowadays with what can do with the stick and the puck. It's kind of impressive, and it kind of makes me wish I could do just 10% of what these guys could do out there. And then also thinking, watching it, this can't be that difficult, because you're gliding on skates in a circle, like when you're ice skating or whatever. But then when you actually try it, which I've done before, it's like, this is actually a lot of work. And it just kind of shows me how out of shape that I was. But, I mean, yeah, the movie was essential for this list for me, because it made me actually get into hockey, for real.
Okay. That's a good one, because I feel the same way about that movie. That might have been on my list, but instead it's another Disney movie. You know that I'm not a huge animated movie guy, and there's only one animated movie on the list, and it's this one, because it was introduced to me very young, and I thought it had scary elements, but it also had, for a Disney movie, kind of surprising, but scary elements, but it also had a good message at heart. It's the name is The Fox and the Hound from 1981.
Never saw that one.
And it's about a young hound dog and a young fox, like babies, become best friends.
Was the hound dog Elvis Presley, and the fox was George Clooney?
No.
You see what I did there, though? Hey.
Okay, I got you.
Okay.
All right, but they become best friends as they were kids, and they go on little adventures together. And then the movie jumps forward in time, and now the hound dog's an adult and the fox is an adult, and the hound dog's job is to hunt that fox. So now they've grown up. They're not best friends anymore, and really now they're enemies. Like nature has made them enemies, but they're still, they get into a situation where it's life or death, and that friendship that they had when they were children shines through, and allows them to, although both have to be separated now as adults. That moment in time where it could have been life or death for either one of them, they still supported each other as friends. So, good moral to the movie. It's a little scary for a kid, especially for as young as I was when I saw this movie in '81, which would have been about 5 years old or 6 years old. But the music, the iconic, kind of like country music, is a kind of a country bumpkin type feel to the movie. It's out in the woods. It's these two animals that look so cute as children playing with each other. It's like a perfect kids aspect. From that aspect, kids would love this. But then the adult versions of them grow up and they got to hunt each other and that kind of thing. It gets a little wild, right? But the movie, to me, the friendship, the cuteness, the music, all give me so much nostalgia for the movie.
Okay. Good choice.
Thank you.
Next for me is, it may not fall under the phrase iconic in some circles, but I see memes and pictures and gifs of this movie posted everywhere all the time. And my sister and I, to this day, we quote it to each other all the time. This is about three brothers who were trained by their grandfather to learn karate. And then they go home and they've got to deal with these bumbling idiot, people who try to break into their house to kidnap them. And this movie's Three Ninjas. I don't even acknowledge anything after. I think part 2 is Three Ninjas Kick Back or something like that. And there's another one that doesn't have the original.
Yeah, we don't talk sequels.
Yeah, we don't. That's not about this episode. So, but this is right around the age where, again, it's just.
Wait, did it make you want to do karate?
You know what? Honestly, it didn't.
Oh, okay.
It just made me it made me happy that I had a sibling, that I have a younger sister.
Oh, okay.
Because in the movie you see the camaraderie between the three brothers, Rocky, Colt, and Tum Tum, and even though they kind of like pick on each other because that's just what you do with siblings, especially at that age, at various ages of your childhood. At the end of the day, they were there for each other. They had discipline because of their grandfather teaching them martial arts, and they knew how to structure and organize a plan to defend their house and protect themselves.
Home Alone aspect sounds like.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this movie that's extremely corny, of course, because this when it came out. But one of the cool things was the kid's bedroom. That's one of the most iconic things I remember about the film. The oldest brother, Rocky's got like this makeshift telephone. He can speak to, I guess, the love interest, Emily, down the street. And then the other brothers would always make fun of him. It's just the best part of the movie is the break-in sequence of the film when you get these idiots trying to break in the house and kidnap them, and then they go kind of home alone for a minute. But yeah, it's just I have a thing about showing sibling dynamics in movies, and I've always been drawn to that for me. And I guess because I enjoy so many of these types of movies with my sister growing up, and the fact that she was kind of along for the ride through majority of my childhood, like to this day, we're like best friends. And we reflect on a lot of these movies on my list often. So it all kind of ties together. It's like like one little web.
And I think I was I don't share that as much with you because I was a only child until I was 11, and then by that time I was so much older than my younger brother that I felt more like a parent than a brother. Said at certain points, or more like a babysitter kind of feeling, but now that we're older, we're closer. But what that particularly, I've never seen that movie again. I haven't seen that one.
Oh man!
But again, I think a little aged out of that, just slightly.
Yeah.
But I do remember growing up in elementary school, and karate was huge. Karate, like kids learning karate or wanted to learn karate or be like Chuck Norris or something like that was big. I remember desperately wanting a book at the book fair that had instructions on how to do karate type thing. I remember that so vividly. Never got it, but wanted it. So.
Well, I'm sure if you have Audible, I'm sure it's out there.
Well, yeah, it was about the wanting of the thing more than the thing.
Got it.
My next movie is another Disney movie. 1986 Flight of the Navigator.
I thought that might be on your list.
Yeah, this is right down my alley. Sci-fi, kid gets not kidnapped, but taken away in an alien spaceship because he needs a navigator. And once the kid helps this alien, it's an alien ship, but it's an alien in itself. The ship is an alien kind of a thing. I don't know if it's just an AI, or if it was actual. I don't know. I don't think they go into that very well, but it does store aliens on board. Like there's little bitty aliens
from different universes and planets.
Yeah. And anyway, he gets on this adventure, and he gets taken. The ship gets what it needs from him, this kid, and brings him back home. But he brings him back home in the future, which is kind of troubling when you think about it. Like how I remember watching as an adult and being shocked at how shocking it would be to be brought to the future, and then all your family's older, or they've been missing you. They've been dealing with a missing kid for however many years that it was. It was devastating for those parents to have their kid disappear, and that really would hit me a lot when I watched it as an adult again. But as a kid, the adventure that drew me so much in to be sitting in that spaceship flying over all the fields and stuff that it shows, and to have that kind of that view inside the spaceship it was kind of like a see-through wall that he was able to see, and that was so cool to me. And
it's like a mini amphitheater almost.
Yeah. And I wonder if you remember this, but Sarah Jessica Parker is in this movie.
I don't. Wow.
As once he comes back, they capture the spaceship and it kind of a NASA type facility, and they question him and things. And she's like she's like the nerdy scientist girl that he
Okay.
connects with. Mm-hmm. And then when he goes back home in the past, like she's like she's as young as him, kind of a thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, all that being said, Flight of the Navigator is just a child-centric alien spaceship movie, sci-fi movie made by Disney. Has a cool time travel element to it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, as an adult, a little shocking about the parents having to live with what they thought was a kidnapped child or a missing child. That was kind of heartbreaking. I think the kid in this movie, the actor, his name is Joey Kramer, did a great job, like for a young kid. Henry Thomas is on that level too. Like some of these child actors from back then, they don't get the credit they deserve for how well they did. But yeah, good movie, Flight of the Navigator.
Okay.
Impactful for me.
Great choice. I figured it would be on your list. I didn't think of it while making mine, but after I made my list, I thought it'll probably be on his.
Yeah, I think we're finding that about our. Like as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, oh, that should have been on my list. It's on yours, or there's one that I'm thinking of now that I should have
Yeah.
been on yours.
I kind of thought we're almost getting to the end of this list. I actually thought we might have a crossover, but so far we haven't. But we got 2 left apiece. So
I don't think we will.
okay. Well, next one for me is it's iconic. You know, it transcends multi generations because they keep giving us new iterations of this IP. But of course, I'm referring to the original because it's our childhood. I could say I'm a day one. I was there when this thing first started. You were there too. You probably were a little aged out. Like, of course, it had movies and it had toys and all this other stuff. And this is about 4 turtles. I mean, that's it. Yeah, yeah.
I was in this.
So I'm talking about the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie.
Yeah.
And an extension of that is, I was, like, I played with, I'm going to admit something that might be a little embarrassing, but I like to be vulnerable. I played with toys a little out of my age group. Like, I was, I won't say a slow learner. It's just, I don't really know how you would describe it, but I was always a little behind in certain, like, childhood growth. Like, my first girlfriend wasn't until 19. My first kiss wasn't until like 19 or 20.
You were a late bloomer.
Thank you. That's the word. A late bloomer. And so I played with Ninja Turtles until I was like, 13, 14, possibly even 15.
I think it's still fine.
And it's funny because I have a couple of cousins who I always remember, and they always remind me whenever they came to my house to visit. They're like, oh yeah, Mike had all the Ninja Turtles, all the G.I. Joes. You had this base, that base, all the characters, the figures. Like, I had all that stuff,
You still have it because we can sell it.
Yeah, no, man. No, I mean, that was a different house, different life. Yeah, I don't have access to any of that. I do have an old 1980s He-Man lunchbox that could possibly be worth something, but it looks weathered, so who knows?
Yes.
Yeah.
We all have things, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Then,
I've got an old Optimus Prime 1984 Transformers ceramic plate, like dinner plate. Man, it's just up in my mom's cabinet with all the other plates, but she never uses it. She's like, look what I found. Let's get that appraised. That might be worth something. Probably not, but yeah.
Let's check eBay, see what it is.
But yeah, Ninja Turtles, that was iconic for me. It's right there in me being a kid, middle school, having the toys. I watched a few clips of the original movie not too long ago on YouTube. It's like, it actually still isn't that bad.
Yeah.
It actually holds up, surprisingly well. The second one I wasn't
really dark, like not like
in tone.
Yeah, like the cinematography, it was dark.
Oh yeah, in tone for sure. Yeah,
It was really dark.
Yeah. So
darkly lit.
It was very dimly lit. Yeah, they used, I guess, all practical lights.
I think they started to turn the lights up as the sequels started to come, and that's why they got worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, so you can't hide those mistakes with all the lights on.
By like teenage, I think there might be 4 by the 4th one.
Yeah.
Like every light in the house is on.
Yeah, I remember having a big crush on April O'Neil character.
Oh yeah.
Bringing in Casey Jones in the first movie, which even as a kid I thought it may be a little too soon to introduce Casey Jones in the movie because let's just make it about the Turtles and Shredder, April O'Neil, the Foot Soldiers. But I did like the route that they took. Like, Casey Jones is just a regular guy in the streets fighting crime, and the suits that the actors wear to be the Ninja Turtles actually look legit.
I think better than the new CGI.
100%, man.
Although they said that The new animated one is really good, but I haven't seen it.
I mean, the animation looks great. I know you're big on animation style, and I did like the interaction with the turtles. They actually seem like teenage age,
Yes.
which is important. Obviously, in this movie, they seem like they may be a little older. Like obviously, they're more seasoned. They've done this for a while. Whereas this movie that came out recently kind of goes back to their origins. They're younger and doing what they do. In this movie, that the newer movie, like they haven't really done much like on the surface. They've been pretty much underground. Only when Splinter says you can go do this. But as teenagers get curious, they start to embark on other endeavors. But yeah, though this original 1989, 1990 movie, like if this came on today, I would still watch it.
Dude, I'm gonna tell you when Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles hit first as a comic book and then as those cartoons and then the live action, it sent it to a whole nother stratosphere, dude. It was so good. I remember loving that as a kid, and I wasn't even, and I was aged out just slightly from the cartoons. My brother was all about it. Like, my brother was writing it on it, but I couldn't help but really love this movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is. It doesn't inform my childhood as much as my adolescence for sure, but it's still iconic.
Yeah.
Good choice.
To me, I think it was the perfect example of ascension to peak popularity because it started, like you said, as a comic book, which I wasn't aware of until many years later. Then you had the cartoon, then the toys, then the movie.
Yeah. If you listen to this and listen to us for any amount of time, then you'll know this movie is one of my favorite movies and one of the most impactful as in my adolescence, which is The Rocketeer from 1991. Rocketeer stars Billy Campbell, Alan Arkin, Jennifer Connelly, Paul Sorvino, Timothy Dalton, directed by Joe Johnston. And this movie it's just disappointed that it didn't do better in box office wise because I would have loved a sequel. But the idea of strapping a rocket pack to your back, I love that, and I've always loved that, and that's why I even liked a movie like Tomorrowland. I love Tomorrowland because of that aspect of it. So that's the intriguing for me. The time period which it takes place, which is after the Depression and before World War II, where the Nazis were still on the rise. It's an intriguing era to be in. I think we've talked about it being a more simpler time before. Love that aspect of it. And then again another Disney movie, and Disney marketed the heck out of this movie. And I just remember that summer being so excited because of the hype for this movie. I remember going to the theater to go watch this movie, and the entire side of the building was a giant Rocketeer sign, like a billboard. That size. It was monstrous. And so it was about hype. It was about the storytelling, the idea of it was a superhero Marvel movie before those became what they are today. It was that kind of movie level. Was it the best movie? No. Storytelling wise, and I go back and watch it as an adult, and not that it doesn't hold up, but you could see there's aspects of it. Wow, I kind of understand why it maybe didn't do as well, but I still love it. And there are iconic scenes that I still love about it, especially the first time that he puts the rocket pack on and saves his friend that's flying his biplane that's about to crash, and he saves him. And there's actually a scene in The Mandalorian, first season, first or second episode, I think second episode, where they pay an homage to the Rocketeer because he's just flying like beside the spaceship, and the guy in a rocket pack is flying right beside him. It's actually Jon Favreau's character flying right beside him. And it's just like in the Rocketeer where there's a plane in the air and the Rocketeer flies by the plane and kind of gives the kid that's watching from the plane a little salute as he's flying by. I think this movie made an impact on a lot of different people, and certainly I think it's my most memorable of that era when it comes to like Disney movies that impacted me as an adolescent or child. So Rocketeer.
Okay, very nice. Let's see. Last one for me is again iconic holiday movie. This is Home Alone. Seen this movie a million times, like more than any of these movies on this list combined. It's one of those, again, you may or may not have heard me talk about. This is one of those movies like my cousin and I, we say during Christmas time we have to watch this movie specifically, or does it feel like Christmas? Like this is the one that like gets us into the Christmas mood, ready for the holidays. I mean, I bought the VHS when it first came out, saw it in the theater when it came out, and we watched it so much. My sister and I growing up that, we could quote the whole thing, and she wouldn't, and I would, and it would get on her nerves, and because I would just like go right into it, and so eventually she was like, "I'm not gonna watch this with you if you're gonna keep quoting everything," so I had to stop because it was more important to watch it with her than to annoy her by quoting every single line.
Yeah.
But this has like really high replay entertainment value, even though you know what's happening. It's just like you talked about this on some of your movies on those lists, like just good, wholesome, fun shenanigans. Like it's just the word I'm gonna always continue to throw out because I like the word anyway. But this one again, just it reminds me of childhood and tied in with Christmas and like the innocence and what it's supposed to be about, which is family and things of that nature, and being like it's a little more in tune with your emotions, and just being joyful and thankful. Like it's just all that for me.
Nice. My brother actually loves that. Actually, I think he loves, I don't know, two more than one, but two where they get to hang out in New York.
Yeah.
Get to order room service and all that stuff comes, and then they have that little recorder that was really marketed a lot.
Everybody wanted that.
Everybody wanted that. All right. My last one on my list is from 1986, and it's the other movie that is directed by John Badham. We talked about Badham being a director on Blue Thunder that I liked. Well, he also directed this movie called Short Circuit from 1986. Ali Sheedy, Steve Guttenberg, Fisher Stevens, about a robot named Johnny Five, who I think he's one of six. He's number 5 of 6, and he obtains sentience basically, and they're designed for war, but he doesn't want that, and falls out of a production truck or some truck and is discovered by Ali Sheedy and Steve Guttenberg, and it's about him just kind of like trying to stop himself from being deleted, basically. Is what it is, and it's a lot of fun. It's a fun sci-fi comedy with some action in it, and it's just good-hearted, and by the time the movie ends, you're in love with Johnny Five. You're in love with his exuberance. They did a really good job with the robotics to making him feel like he's come alive, and in his movements. And it's certainly a little bit dated, obviously, because this was back in 1986. So their idea of what cybernetics would be or robotics would be,
completely different.
It's probably a bit different. But also, I don't think we have anything today that kind of matches what he is. But the animatronics of the people that operated him, off the charts, really good, and they did a good job of influencing or inputting his personality into the puppet.
Yeah,
basically.
they did a great job.
They did, yeah. And so he comes alive on screen as a kid who's probably 10 years old when this came out. This was Enamored, and they came out with some sequels, but at least one. I know there's at least one. But no, Short Circuit, I love that movie. It's just good fun, and again, it delves into that sci-fi element of some of the movies that I liked, like the Not Quite Human, like the Flight of the Navigator, E.T., the Extraterrestrial. There's a sci-fi element to these movies, and that's probably why I love sci-fi as much as I love it today.
It's as good a reason as any. I mean, I'm rocking with it.
So that's our list. Top 10 movies that made me miss my childhood. What are some of your movies? Think about some of the movies that pop into your head if you're presented with this idea. What movies make you nostalgic for your childhood or just remind you of being a child? And then maybe think about how they've influenced your life in the ways the things that you do today or the things that you like today. I think a lot of the movies that we talked about help influence the kind of movies that we like even now, because we fell in love with them as a kid. Or what we didn't like maybe influenced it in another way. So there's a psychology thing to be studied here about this list of childhood movie influences and how they impacted us. So good list, man. Good topic.
I tried, man. I tried to aim to please, So.
All right. Well, that's another podcast in the books for us, and we hope that you enjoyed it. Mike, anything to sign out on?
Yeah. So we kind of touched on this one particular word a few times going through today's list. coming up next time, we are going to delve into sequels. So if you're into that, or interested in that, then I think you should tune in. I think this will be a good conversation piece to listen to, and then even afterwards. So stay tuned.
And we hope that you'll continue to listen to us as if we are doing a sequel ourselves here in the next podcast. So, and that's a open sigh from Mike as he does not like, I guess, my dad joke of a segue. Anyway, guys, he didn't know what to say.
I'm not a dad, so what to say.
Thank you guys for listening once again. I hope you had a good time, and we'll see you next time. See ya.
Later.